Hello, lovely listeners. I am Bessie Adwoa Pokua, and you are listening to the Community First podcast, where we have social and legal conversations with the community. My co-host is in the person of
David William Prempe.
On our last episode, we had our guest speaker, Maame Barnie, a legal associate of BMP Associates, speak to us about the concept of domestic violence, what it is and what it isn't. By way of recap, William, what are some of the things you learned from our first episode?
From the first episode, I learned a lot. I learned men can also be victims of domestic violence. I also learned that domestic violence does not only occur within the context of a family setting. It does not only occur within the context of a family relationship or among family members. It can extend beyond that to even a boyfriend-girlfriend type of relationship. Tenant-landlord, I believe, could even encompass all that. So I learned a lot. What did you learn?
Well, I also did learn a lot. I mean, one of the things that I actually remember is the fact that domestic violence does not occur only when there's poverty and unemployment in the family. Also, most importantly, I remember Mame told us that domestic violence is a crime and it's not a private family matter to be resolved by family elders. So I think it was a very good episode.
I agree.
So today's episode is actually still on the topic of domestic violence, but this session focuses on the remedies that are made available to victims of domestic violence, the protection afforded them, and the various enforcement mechanisms to be employed by the established institutions to help curb the menace. So for this episode, we actually have two guests. Our very own special Mame, whom we all know. You're welcome, Mame.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Let's continue this conversation.
Mame, we are very happy to have you here once again. Our second guest is a very special one in the person of Miss Adwoa Pokua Bame. So Miss Bame is an administrator by profession and a human rights advocate by passion. She's the executive director of WISE, which is the Women's Initiative for Self-Empowerment. WISE is an NGO that seeks to empower women and provide psychosocial support services to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. She's an active member of several networks in Ghana that address issues of care and support for survivors of SGBV, that's the sexual and gender-based violence, and women's participation in public decision-making. She strives to utilize her people management skills and passion for social justice in contributing significantly to creating a violence-free society where women are empowered to live meaningful lives and can contribute to national development. Ms. Bame, you are warmly welcome. We are happy to have you as our very first external guest speaker on the Community First podcast. We believe strongly that with your numerous experience as a social worker and human rights advocate, you would contribute immensely to our conversation on domestic violence. You are welcome.
Thank you. And is it okay to just call me Adwoa?
That would really,
No,
really be convenient, actually.
Yes, call me Adwoa. I'm fine. I mean,
okay, you're welcome, Adwoa.
Thank you for having me. And Mame, I listened to your podcast and it was really good.
Thank you, Adwoa.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to be on the same program with you.
We're happy to have you as well.
Thanks.
So without wasting much time, William,
Yes,
over
Bessie.
to you.
All right, so Adwoa.
Yes.
I think we should just dive straight into the questions that we have for you today.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and we want to start by asking you, being a social worker, have you handled any issues of domestic violence? This is an easy one, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's what I do. Okay, let me first of all say I'm not a trained social worker.
Okay.
But I do social work. Mm-hmm. I work with social workers, trained social workers, counselors, and activists, basically. Yes. What my organization does, WISE, is we meet survivors, and we normally like to call them survivors as part of the empowerment process. Okay. But survivors, victims, they are the same. But for us, we believe that they have survived the abuse and they have reached us, and we help them to continue with their life. So we meet survivors where they normally would report, which is Dofsu, the police station. And then we work with other partners like FIDA. We have a Department of Social Welfare.
Okay.
We get referrals from all these people. So yes, I have handled cases of domestic violence. On the broader level, the sexual and gender-based violence, but domestic violence, yes, loads of it. I don't know if I want to start.
So I actually like the term survivor. It has a positive ring to it. I mean,
absolutely.
Victim has this.
Victimizing. Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's the same. It's just, you really want to empower the person through the process. So the words that you use are also important.
Yeah. So what advice do you usually give these survivors?
Okay. And let me again say we don't give advice.
Okay.
Okay. So the survivor comes to you and needs help.
Okay.
Normally, what you do is make them feel better about themselves. Very often, nobody has listened to them, so they need a listening ear.
Okay.
So you give them the chance to just speak tell you their story, go through their issues, just to get it off their chest. That's what you do. And then as you listen, you look at, okay, what options are available for her or him? I mean, and normally, I know the first episode talked about it's not only women who get abused. That's true. But the numbers for women are higher than the men. So you normally will hear, when I speak, I will say her, him. Yeah, I won't say him, her. I normally say her, him for a reason, because a lot more women or females get abused. Yeah. So you try and help them to decide what they want to do.
Okay.
The posture that you need as a counselor or as somebody who can support a survivor is let them believe in themselves, believe in the power that they have. Because they have survived a situation to get to you.
Yeah.
So at least they have the ability to go through something.
Yeah.
So you want to help them bring out their own potential, because there's a lot of potential to support their lives. You want to help them bring that out. So you discuss what options they have, what they think, what they need, and then of course you bring the professional aspect to it. But the last thing you want to do is treat them like they don't know what they want, because they know what they want. Nobody listens to them, and they're hoping that you will listen to them. Yeah. So you listen to them, and then you help them. So we don't give them advice, but we lead them to make decisions, and then of course, where there are support services available that they don't know, you make them aware of those support services that they can access. Because let me give you an example. A woman comes to you, and sometimes she goes to ask for money for breakfast for the children to go to school, and she might not get a beating immediately, but then it starts piling up. She gets one or two insults, and then she goes back, she gets another. The next time it's something that just would take her whole spirit away. But that's because economically she's dependent on this perpetrator. So for example, if she's able to set up herself something small, it doesn't have to be anything big. Sometimes selling oranges, sometimes selling pure water. Now pure water business is a big business, and they have money to be able to cater for their family. They won't go to the perpetrator for that. So sometimes those are the things that you want to, that's why for us, it's about self-empowerment. You cannot empower somebody who doesn't want to be empowered. Yeah. So you help them bring out their own. And sometimes when they speak to you, they realize that they have power, but they didn't know they had that power. So you help them bring out those ones. So it's not us advising them, but helping them decide on what, or pick up on what they need and what is good for them, and then leading them to wherever they can get those support services. I
see. So they come, you don't label them as victims, you label them as survivors, and then you empower them to speak up, to reach.
We don't even label them.
Okay, I don't mean label as in label, but I mean you'd rather call them survivors than
we'd rather them. And calling them victims is not a bad thing, but for us, we refer to them as survivors as part of the empowerment process. Yes, but they have been victims of a situation.
Yes.
They have survived it and they have been able to reach you. And so you want to support them. So if somebody calls them victims, it's not wrong. But the way we work, that's how, and for us, it helps because then in your mind's eye, you know that, okay, this person is not, what's the word? I don't want, like, onya mobile. And sometimes I'll interlace it with this because you never know who is listening.
Yeah.
But they have power. You just need, at that point, they've lost their power.
Yeah.
You just need to help them to bring it out.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, they come to us. And sometimes if you know their names is good. So when you are working with them one-on-one, you can address them because then they feel like, oh, somebody thinks about me. I mean something to somebody, you know? Yeah. Sometimes that's all they need. Like, I remember one woman was like, will you listen to me? She said it in Chi. Maame ubetie me. I'm like, that's why I'm here. And she had been referred from another partner, The story was something else. And so even as she spoke, I think she was watching my body language. And that's one thing you shouldn't do as a, but it's natural. You're hearing some of these horrific stories and you are reacting. But you should always remember to empathize, not sympathize, but it's a very thin line, between sympathy and empathy, So yeah.
So right now we would proceed on the assumption that many people listening to this podcast, or at least a number of them, have found themselves to be victims, or let's say survivors.
Yeah, that's fine.
What would you tell such people listening right now? What do you think? What should they do? Should they find themselves in circumstances of where they are victims of domestic violence? What's the first thing you encourage?
The first thing you should say to yourself, if you find yourself in that situation, it is not my fault.
Okay.
Don't blame yourself for somebody's mistake. Very often, that's what they are made to feel.
Internalize it.
Yes. Why did you do this? Why didn't you do this? Maybe you should have done this. There is no excuse for violence. That person who had perpetrated that violence chose to do it. You did not provoke them. Before the act was passed, I used to say, when people say, oh, she provoked me. When you go to work and your secretary provokes you, you don't slap her. Even there, you don't.
Yeah.
And now even worse, because the act will take you on, So, as a survivor, don't blame yourself. You are worth everything God made you to be. Maybe at this point, one person does not appreciate it, but appreciate yourself. Love yourself enough to want to do something about your situation. Yeah. So yes, if you're going through that, you need to tell yourself it is not your fault. Don't take the blame for somebody's mistake, but seek help.
Okay.
And seeking help sometimes is difficult.
Okay.
Very often, we create networks, social networks for ourselves, which are good because that's the kind of the first point of call. You call a friend, you call a sister, you call a brother, you call somebody. But then beyond those ones, there are official avenues that you can report. Yeah. Sometimes people don't. I remember there was a case in court one time. The lady had been through the process, and then eventually the judge was like, okay, so they're pronouncing this, they're passing sentence. This man should go in for I don't know how many years. This lady broke down crying. Judge, Manfanamba has said, and she meant it because this is the breadwinner.
The breadwinner.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess at some point, something didn't work out. That's why you need to help the survivor understand the options that are available.
Yes.
What do you want to do? Do you just want, and sometimes all they want to do is feel better about themselves.
Yes.
Bring out their own power. And then go back to the situation. You teach them coping strategies. They will be able to cope. Sometimes they don't want the official go and report to the police, those things. When it's life-threatening, you must report to the police. Especially when, he, she, when it's perpetrator, it becomes he, she. When it's survivor, it's she. When he, she has threatened, and you know your spouse, so when you can sense that this threat is not empty, you need to get help. Go to the police. But again, that's where the challenge is. Go to the police. Which police? DOFSU was set up as a special unit to address some of these issues. And they actually have a mission to prevent, to prosecute all domestic violence and all its related matters. Unfortunately, not too many people know how welcoming DOFSU is. Not too many people know even where the DOFSU offices are. So they'll go to the traditional police, and sometimes the traditional police, the response kind of puts them off. But I know that now the traditional police are being trained as part of their curriculum. They're trained to address or understand some of these issues. So if you go to a police officer and you feel like you didn't get the support that you wanted. You can go to a higher, police officer. But I think that as much as possible, and now they have them in the districts, which is a good thing. As much as possible, if you have a domestic violence case, go to a DOFSU. DOFSU is the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit, specifically.
But you would think when you take a domestic violence complaint to the police, they would refer it to DOFSU. It doesn't work that way.
It should.
Isn't DOFSU a unit?
Absolutely. It's
why,
a special unit.
Why doesn't it work that way?
It depends on where it is. I mean, I cannot sit here and speak for for the police, but I'm saying that from experience, if there's no DOFSU in that unit, they might refer you to a DOFSU that is. But now in fact, there's actually a directive from the Ghana Police Service that every domestic violence case should be reported to the nearest district. A lot of them used to come to the ministries because that was like the headquarters of DOFSU. But now they are supposed to go to their district. Again, it's supposed to help people who don't have money to go around various places to be able to get their cases addressed. So what I'm hoping is happening, and I cannot say for sure. What I'm hoping is happening now is even when the traditional police take up the case, they will refer to the nearest police DOFSU person.
Thank you very much. I hope you don't mind if we take the hot seat away from you a bit.
Oh, that's fine.
Mami.
Yeah.
So we are talking about, Adwoa has mentioned that, first of all, don't internalize it. Don't think you are the person at fault. Understand that it's a decision someone else made, and you should understand your worth, and that's why you should seek help. And in that, we transition to speaking about the channels of redress. So still on that topic, what's your professional opinion on the channels of redress available to survivors? I really like this word, survivors of domestic violence.
Okay, so I'll start off with saying I really agree with everything that Adwoa has said.
Okay.
It's very important. Self-love is very important. Understanding that you are not the reason why the person decided to do that. It was their decision. And you should love yourself enough to know that you are only a victim, and it's not that you did something to cause the person to do it. And moving on from there, I'd say that the next step would be to speak up. Like I said earlier, it's important to speak up, and in speaking up, that's where the quarters for redress come in. Usually the police is supposed to be our friend, so the first point of call would usually be the police station. Like she said, it's easier to find a police station in a district than a DOFSU center. So usually the first point of call should be the police station. If there happens to be a DOFSU within your district, definitely that should be the first place that you should go. Otherwise, the police station is the next best place to go to. And realize that for most people, they might not be able to go there on their own because they will need some moral support. They will need someone to go there with. So if as a victim, you are not able to go there on your own, you can go with somebody that you trust. It can be a friend, it can be a family member, somebody that would support you to be able to tell the story, or will give you some moral support so that you can voice it out and then, make sure that the perpetrator is dealt with. So I would say that yes, the police station, DOFSU, and you don't have to go alone. You can go with somebody who can help. And also, you might have situations where the victim is actually a child. So in that case, the parents, the next friend, an adult,
trusted adult,
exactly, trusted adults can accompany the person to the police station to make the report.
Okay, so Mami, apart from these categories of people who can file a complaint on behalf of a survivor, who else can actually file such a complaint?
So like I mentioned that you, the victim, a friend of the victim, if you're a child, the parent or next friend, you can also have a relative go with you. We can also even have a passerby, somebody who's a third party altogether. So once you see domestic violence being perpetrated on somebody and you happen to be a witness, you can go and report on behalf of the person who is experiencing or is a victim to the domestic violence. And then you can also actually have a personal representative in a case where the person who suffered the domestic violence actually dies in the process.
Yeah.
So it doesn't end with the death of the person. You can actually seek justice for the person. Yes.
Wow.
So I think Adwoa stated that the Ghana Police Service is trying to inculcate DOFSU units in various districts.
Yeah.
But I think that, as she said, it's actually an issue when people want to actually file a complaint but don't know where exactly to go. Does the law actually make any provision for a particular venue where complaints should be made?
Okay, so the law states that you should make the complaint where the offender resides or the perpetrator resides, where the survivor resides, where the domestic violence occurrence occurred, and then if it's a place where the victim is temporarily, you can also make the reports there. So these are some of the places that you can make the reports.
By the law, you mean the Domestic Violence
The Domestic Violence Act.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So, Maame, can you share with us what typically goes into a complaint? So, if a survivor walks into the police station, what is he or she supposed to speak? She or he supposed to say to actually to the police to enable them file the complaint?
Okay, so what you should actually happen is you get to the police station and then the police would interview you. So you let them know what actually happened. Then the police is supposed to record the complaint and then you have the opportunity to ask for an extract of the complaint. Now, when you do make the complaint and there's the need for you to seek medical assistance, they should direct you in the right, point you in the right direction, and they should actually supposed to provide free medical attention for such victims. As to whether it actually happens is another thing.
As in the police should provide free medical.
Yes, it's actually stated in the law that they are supposed to provide free.
Adwoa, does that actually happen?
No, what the police is supposed to do is to accompany the survivor to a medical center with the police medical report form.
Okay.
And that survivor is supposed to get free medical services.
Okay.
It's free to the survivor, but the doctor, the medical professional gets paid from the state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
We've tried to fight it free, but on numerous occasions they have said, look, what I put on paper might be evidence in court, especially when it's sexual assault. So when that time comes, I need to go to court. So it's part of the act. So once you go to the hospital, and it's not every time that the police can escort the survivor. But I mean, if it was a child, for example, the trusted adult that went with the child, bring that child to a government hospital with a police medical form. So what the police is supposed to do is to by all means give you that form. So you bring it to the medical facility. The doctor, whichever doctor attends to you, is supposed to fill it out. So because then they do the exams, because that is evidence in court.
Yeah.
You cannot wait till, all the evidence will be washed off.
Yeah.
But at least if the doctor is able to document those ones, it's presented in court. And then the doctor is supposed to come and defend whatever they have written.
Wow.
So yes, so every survivor or victim of domestic violence or sexual assault or sexual and gender-based violence is entitled to free medical care. That's what the act says.
Okay.
So is it that once the doctor sees the police form, they know that it is free, so then you are not charged for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I see the reason why you need to go to the police.
Yes,
And then also it has to be a government hospital because they understand the private hospital. Unless they want to do it. But there are some private hospitals that do pro bono.
Yes.
There are some who, as part of what do they call it? Corporate social responsibility. Yes. They
And
do.
that's also
But
good news.
yeah.
Yes. So as I was saying, they interview you, they take the record, you're allowed to get an extract, then there's a medical treatment if as necessary. They're also supposed to provide safety. So you have certain situations where the victim is afraid to go back home because the perpetrator might catch them or do something to them. So they're supposed to make sure that the victim or survivor is safe. And then they are also supposed to assist you or guide you towards preserving evidence, so that evidence can be used against the perpetrator if caught. So yes, these are the things that the police should do.
Adwoa, I have a quick one, not to take us back, but you mentioned options available to survivors, and before you mentioned the professional support systems. So I want you to explain to us or give us examples of these options that you usually spell out to these survivors. And apart from the police, which we have spoken about, which other support systems are in place to ensure that these survivors are actually protected?
Okay. So I talked about social networks.
Yes.
Those are really crucial because your friend, your sister, your brother is closer to you than the police. So, and sometimes they are just a phone call away. What the survivor needs is to calm down, especially when it's a fresh incident, when they are going through it, or when they are so scared that, like Maame said, going back home will be a problem. Mm-hmm. A trusted friend will be able to help you calm down and then probably even bring you out of that situation. The police, yes, they're supposed to provide shelter. That's why even the Act mandates the setting up of shelters, but the police don't have it. But fortunately, they work with NGOs like WISE, like ACT, so sometimes they will call, we have this situation. But the good thing now is the domestic violence one-stop shop, the DOVSU one-stop shop, has shelters.
Okay.
So you get that kind of support now. But it's always good to have somebody around that you can always rely on before you get to the police.
That one-stop shop, sorry to cut you off, but where exactly is it?
Police headquarters, the CID.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, behind. It's a very nice building. What's the word? Dilapidated building that was renovated.
Renovated it.
I mean, it's an excellent edifice. And the services in there are awesome. You get everything under one roof. I mean, I was telling Adley that you guys should take a tour of the place. You should. You really should, for the work that you're doing. And I mean, I'm praying that they get funding to publicize it. It hasn't been publicized enough. It's awesome.
So aside this,
it was inaugurated last year, maybe June or something. It hasn't been there for too long, but no, it has everything. It has a children's center, children's interview room where they don't have to see the perpetrator. It has 2 courts. I'm sitting here advertising for them like it's my phone. But it sounds
like a wonderful place.
It's awesome. I was awed. I mean, like the children's waiting area. I got in there, I'm like, wow. It's so child-friendly. Oh. The interview room is so child-friendly. And the good thing is the coordinator can see everything that goes on in there from her office. So that, that check and balance, if an officer is not being professional. It's awesome. You guys should take a tour. You really should.
Yes, you should put that on our to-do
list. You really should. I'm sure she'll be happy to host you. Yeah.
I was going to ask, with the one-stop shop, what are some of the services you would get in the building aside the shelters? But I think you mentioned a number.
There's a clinical psychologist. There's what do you call it? There's a lab where you can do, like the medical doctor. Okay. And then they have the 24-hour helpline.
Okay.
So you can call like call center. Yeah, and then you get the support. I mean, I'm really praying that they are able to publicize it, because that facility cannot just sit there and people will know about it. Yeah. But I'm sure. Probably the various DOVSUs refer. But I mean, Anyway.
I think this platform is even publicizing
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. So maybe you should get Dofsu to come and talk about it. They're doing awesome work.
I think when we take the tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Dofsu sometimes gets lambasted for one thing or the other, but that's, working with human beings, you always have that.
Yeah.
They also have their constraints. They work within those constraints. They're doing well. And I think that government should give them more attention. Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to say when it has to do with women and children, there's no political will to devote enough. But I'm sure I've just said it. And that's the truth. But we really, really should be up and doing about some of these things. Because, I mean, look at the budget for the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection. You compare it to other ministries, and it's like, are we really serious?
Ministry of Gender around the AG side.
AG, other ministry, yeah. Is it Attorney General? No, near Ministry's police station.
Yeah, I used to work at the AG, and there was.
Is it AG? It's in between Accountant General.
Yeah, Controller.
Okay.
Yeah, that side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that where AG is?
Yes, AG is just opposite Controller.
I'm on the other side. Okay, all right.
Anyway, Bessie.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to find out from you, Adwoa. Institutions like the church, schools, how do they come in to assist these survivors?
Okay. They play very important roles. So at WISE, for example, we work with these institutions. Okay. Now let me take an opportunity to talk about it a little, because we are in there to provide services. We look at the whole support to survivors from a three-pronged approach. So we respond to the survivors, those who come to us with counseling, confidential support services. We provide sometimes basic needs, food. Sometimes the survivor comes and you can tell that before they tell their story, they need food. You have to give them food, And then beyond, when they leave your premises, how do you support them? And then we find that some of these women remain in those abusive relationships because they are dependent on the perpetrators. So when we think that they feel they've had enough counseling where they feel better about themselves, you help them decide what they want to do, and then you give them a little capital to start something. And then we also know that when they leave our situation or our premises, they go into the communities. So we work with those communities to ensure that the environment is enabling for their empowerment. So we work with churches, we work with schools. I mean, and with schools, when you go to these schools, the kind of things these children say, we underestimate what they know.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're telling their own story, but they're making it look like they're asking for a friend. And it's good. For us, it's good. So we do schools outreach programs, community outreach programs, so you're engaging with community leaders to understand some of these processes. Well, there's an NGO that has the Gender Center. It has the community-based approach to addressing this. They have a combat system. So one person commits domestic violence, is reported to another. Before you know it, you're before the chief.
No.
And then the survivor is also supported. It's a whole maybe you guys should learn that as well. Look it up.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it.
Yeah, the combat approach to addressing domestic violence. So we work with these churches because, first off, spare the rod and spoil the child. And then the woman has to be submissive. You need to, all those things. We keep saying that before submit yourself unto your husband, husbands love your wives.
Yeah.
So how we turn it around, we don't know. But there are some churches that are really, really progressive in addressing some of these issues. Some are still stuck in the man is the head, so whatever the man says goes, And we've had cases where, the woman has been made to apologize to the man because maybe he's a deacon, he's a that, when he has perpetrated that abuse. But we work with these churches to understand the process. Because telling a woman to submit to an abusive husband is signing the woman's death warrant. So the churches need to understand that you need your members alive. Help them to stay alive. You need your members healthy. Help them to stay healthy. You need your members empowered, mentally and everything. Help them to stay that way. So the churches have a role to play. So we work with the churches, of course, with the schools, because you teach them young, catch them when they are young. They understand the processes, And normally, especially around Valentine's Day and those things, because there's so much exposure for these children, So yeah. We try, and it's not just WISE. A lot of NGOs do the advocacy around as well, work on child marriage, those things. So yeah, so all these institutions come to play. But I would say to any survivor victim that if you need help, talk to the closest person near you, apart from the perpetrator.
Okay.
Of course, sometimes the closest person is the abuser. But no, not that person. Always have a friend that you can talk to, and a trusted friend, not a friend who will now just send your case outside, and somebody who can give you help.
Okay. So I want to throw a question to both Adwoa and Maame regarding the police and the courts. What exactly is their role when matters of domestic violence are brought before them, and what are some of the potential orders that a court can make in respect of the victim and then the offender as well? What are some of the reliefs that they will be entitled to?
Okay. Maame has talked about the police and what they offer.
The courts.
Yeah, and since she's a legal person, let me just pick one or two. This is what I know the courts are. In fact, this is what the Act mandates them to do. Okay. So they are supposed to oversee these cases and adjudicate and bring relief to
the victims or the survivor.
And then bring the perpetrator to book.
Okay.
But they also have, an option to order reconciliation where it's in the interest of the family. Sometimes they're saying that these things come to break the family unit. That's not the intention of the Act, and that's not the intention of any advocacy. The intention of all this advocacy is so that everybody lives a violence-free life.
Yeah.
So sometimes they would recommend reconciliation, alternative dispute resolution, those things. So they bring, experts when they have looked at the options, but they would have gone through a series. I'm not a lawyer, but that's one thing I know they do.
They do, yeah.
And then they can issue protection orders. Some of them interim, some of them like final, depending. Some of them occupation for various reasons. And I'm sure Maame will explain the various protection orders. But yes, if you don't want somebody to come close to you, if you don't want an abuser to come close to you, the court is supposed to protect you with that order.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Maame, the ball is in your court.
Adwoa has said it all. Yeah, just to add, yes, like she said, with the courts, they're supposed to give protection orders. You can have an interim protection order, which is like short term, maybe pending the matter. You can also have the final protection order after everything has been done, and that's like final. So then the perpetrator is not supposed to get close to the victim or survivor at all, no matter what. And then you also have the courts can also award damages or compensation if that would sort the matter out between the parties. So like she said, there are different options depending on the scenarios. So then they can advocate for ADR, which is to settle the matter amicably. They can also decide to award compensation, and in certain cases they can also decide to sentence the perpetrator. And per the Domestic Violence Act, the sentence should be not more than 2 years in prison, or might be asked to pay a fine of 500 penalty units, not more than 500 penalty units. And then currently a penalty unit is 12 cedis, so we are looking at about 6,000, not more than 6,000 Ghana cedis can be awarded as a fine against the perpetrator. And then also with the police, they have the right to arrest. So once you make the reports and everything, and you're able to point them to the perpetrator, or they do their investigations, they have the right to arrest, and they don't necessarily need a warrant to arrest. They can arrest with or without a warrant. So that's how the police and the courts come in.
And let me add that talking about arrest, as a citizen, a regular citizen.
Yeah.
You can
You
also
can actually arrest a perpetrator, but then of course you need to bring that perpetrator to the police within
The police
24 hours.
Exactly.
So if you're strong enough, you're like macho like you can actually go and one of the people who can actually file a complaint is, she said, if you have information. So your neighbor, every time you hear something, you might not even know what is going on in there, but you can report to the police, and of course the police have to keep your identity secret,
Anonymous.
and then they can do that. So yeah.
And just to add, you don't need to wait for it to happen. Like if you have reasonable cause, you just sense that something might be going on, you can actually either go in and arrest or make the report to the police for them to do the arrest.
Okay.
Wow. This has really been a very insightful conversation.
The act is a good one.
It is.
When you have time, just digest it section by section, subsection by subsection. It's a good one. I mean, it's comprehensive. And if we actually implement this act, we should be home and dry.
It's actually encouraging to know that steps are being taken to make the implementation more, practical. Because, like you said, with the one-stop shop, the things like that being done, then we are looking forward.
Yeah, basically bringing the act to life. I think we need to. Bessie, did you note it down? We
Exactly.
Need to go
That's actually
we need to go to the
on my
one-stop shop.
to-do list. I think we should take a tour.
I could arrange that for you.
Yes,
Yes.
then
We'll be
that-
happy.
Book an
that's
appointment.
We'll be
correct.
glad.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm a senior citizen, so just a reminder I should be good.
Okay, William, I think we should.
Yeah, this has been a very insightful discussion. We've learned a lot. What has actually touched my heart is the fact that, as Adwoa said, if it happens to you, don't internalize it. Don't think you are the problem.
It's not your fault.
It's not you. It's them. It's the person who decided to make a choice to abuse you or exact violence against your person. So you have to be able to understand that first and foremost, and then know your worth. And then you should seek help for yourself. And Adwoa and Maame have helped us identify the various institutions, the various social and legal measures that have been put in place by law to help, first of all, the offenders to be brought to book, and then secondly, to empower the survivors. So, Bessie, do you have anything you would like to add?
Can I add? There's one institution that we didn't talk about much, the Department of Social Welfare.
Oh, yeah.
And they are everywhere. I think that until I got into this work, I saw social welfare as dealing with child issues, child maintenance, and no, they go beyond that.
Okay.
So if you're a survivor or a victim and you don't want to go to the police necessarily, you can go to social welfare. And they will refer you to the appropriate quarters. I know that most of the work that social welfare does, and they're good at that. They will ensure if you're a man and you don't want to take care of your child, you will. Yeah. I can assure you. You go and pay to them, and then the mother can. You will. So, social welfare, and again, another institution that is under-resourced, which the government needs to look at. I think we need to do some serious advocacy around which organizations the government. Maybe we should start drawing up their budget, right? We should start drawing up their budget, yes. But social welfare is a good place to go to if you have a challenge, and you should get the help that you need. Then, of course, there are so many CSOs around, so yeah, we could. I'm sure. Moving on, you have a directory of support service providers.
Yes,
that would help.
We should make a directory.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bessie, do you want any final thoughts?
After everything that's been said,
we want to know what's your final thoughts.
I've really learned a lot, and I'm actually impressed by the one-stop shop. I'll take a tour there with my team members, and we'll come back to make a lot of noise about it. Yes. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Maame. Thank you, Adwoa. Maybe along the line, we'll call you back.
Absolutely. This is my passion. I'm passionate about.
We're happy to come on.
Yeah.
And again.
No, anytime.
All right.
Anytime.
So this has been Community First, a BPA podcast where we have legal and social conversations with the community. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.